Please don't start interpreting just yet. Thank you for clicking on my speech, which is about lowering the voting age so that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds can have the right to vote. I don't think there's a huge amount of vocabulary that you won't know. I'm going to talk about David Cameron, the former UK Prime Minister, and I'll mention some terms like enfranchisement and voter turnout and smoke and mirrors as well. I'll start my speech now. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps it's not very surprising considering that I'm a dual British-Irish citizen, but I remember the morning of the 24th of June 2016, the day of the Brexit announcement, as clearly as if it were yesterday. I remember the journalists who tried to mask their disbelief as they informed the nation of the unexpected result. I remember the resignation of our then Prime Minister, David Cameron, and the chaos that rapidly ensued. But most of all, I remember this burning sense of injustice that I felt, aged 17, deemed too young to have any credible opinion on the withdrawal of the UK from the European Union, too young to have any real understanding of the consequences of such a move, and therefore unable to do anything else but accept a decision that would monumentally affect the rest of my life. In the United Kingdom, the minimum voting age has been fixed at 18 since the 1970s. This is also the case in most countries across the globe, with the notable exceptions of Austria, Ecuador, and Nicaragua. And yet, it goes without saying that our society bears almost no resemblance to the one that existed 50 years ago. So, surely then it's time for a change? For many people, lowering the voting age to 16 seems like a risky proposition. A substantial proportion of the population argue that teenagers lack the maturity, the understanding, and the motivation necessary to be able to meaningfully cast their ballot in an election. However, in my speech today, I would like to give you 3 reasons why offering 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote would help rather than hinder democracy in a country such as the UK. Firstly, with the rise of social media, young people are more politically engaged than ever before. Young adults are often depicted in the press as lazy, poorly informed, and apathetic. But the latest sociological research disputes this, and actually we only have to look at the likes of Greta Thunberg, Ix Gonzalez, and Malala Yousafzai, who had all established themselves as powerful global changemakers well before their 18th birthdays, to realise that, in reality, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, according to a study that was carried out by UNICEF in 2020, teenagers aged between 16 and 17 were more likely to be involved in politics than ever before, and not just in a superficial way either, quite the opposite. The report suggests that, contrary to popular belief, young people are able to see through the smoke and mirrors so frequently deployed in political discourse and demand real rather than performative action from their representatives. Moreover, according to a study from the University of Chicago, American youth were just as likely as adults to know the names of the candidates running for office, as well as the issues that they campaigned on. If this research is to be believed, then depriving this age range from having a say in a country's future just seems rather illogical. Secondly, studies suggest that lowering the voting age to 16 would increase voter turnout and help to develop lifelong voting habits among the electorate. The United Kingdom has one of the lowest voter turnouts in Europe, at 67.3%, trailing behind other countries such as Sweden at 84.2% and Belgium at just over 90%. According to a study conducted by the University of Edinburgh, giving a 16-year-old the right to vote motivates other adults in their households to vote. And this means that the overall voter turnout increases, which hopefully would lead to the election of a more representative democratic government. Also, that same study, which monitored the voter habits of the teenagers in Scotland who were given the right to vote ahead of the independence referendum in 2014, found that 16-year-old voters were more likely to continue to vote throughout their lives in comparison to their peers who were only enfranchised at 18. In other words, if you give people the right to vote earlier in life, they are more likely to make voting a habit that they continue to practice throughout their lives. Which brings me to my final point. Last but by no means least, the right to vote is in line with the other responsibilities many states award those who reach 16 years of age. In other words, if we consider 16-year-olds responsible enough to get married, to lay down their lives for their country, and to even bring a child into the world, why then are we so convinced that they lack the maturity to go to the ballot boxes and cast a vote in an election? In conclusion, it seems to me that the 16 and 17-year-olds of our nations have been underestimated, undervalued, and unappreciated for far too long. In an aging society, increased youth engagement in politics has manifold benefits for the preservation of democracy worldwide. And if no steps are taken, older generations could soon be heavily overrepresented in the political sphere, with younger generations having comparatively little influence on the decisions that affect our country's futures. Surely it's time then that we give our youth the credit they deserve. Thank you for listening.